Welcome everybody to this video from the Mediation Foundation of Ireland on elder mediation. And joining us today is Blathnaid Colhoun. Hopefully I've pronounced that correctly. Blathnaid, will you introduce yourself to the people watching this video now? Because today is all about elder mediation. And the reason I wanted to have this video for people is we touch on this in the course, and really we don't do it enough justice. It's a very specialized area. We want to uh, figure out from yourself what's your own background, what got you interested in this, and what people should look out for when they're of interest in this area of elder mediation. So if you introduce yourself and tell us why you got into elder mediation, that'd be great.
Sure. Thank you very much, William, for the opportunity to come and talk to you today. Yes, this is a great interest of mine, and it's a good time to be talking to me about it because I'm actually in the middle of the training. In fact, I'm almost at the end of the road of the training, which began a full year ago. So my own background, well, I come from an education background, but I retired some years ago. And prior to that, I had done the mediation training, indeed, with MFI in 2014-15. And but I really hadn't had the time, although dealing with a lot of conflict in my work situation, I hadn't had a lot of time to do actual mediation. So I came back to it in 2018-19 when I did a refresher with yourselves, and I got into community mediation. So that's where my experience really is. But I always had, I suppose I suppose it arose out of my personal experience. I come from a large family, and both our parents died in 2015-16. And I suppose coming out of that, I saw what can happen in families, I suppose, when people are aging and when all the different issues in relation to that have to be considered. Um, and I had been trying to get onto the elder mediation course for some time, and eventually last November, that's exactly what happened. And it was very timely because, of course, as your audience will know, since January of this year, it has become compulsory to have the elder mediation training to do elder mediation. Prior to this, you didn't have to have the specialized training, but now you do.
And how does uh, elder mediation training differ from the other types of mediation? So how is elder mediation even different?
Well, in the first place, you do 42 hours of training, if you like, in two blocks, 2 3 day blocks. So, for example, our group of 10 had a block of 3 days last November. Then we had another block in April of this year. And in the interim, we had to have done 3 role plays each. So we all met together for a couple of days, and it was quite intense, as you can imagine. But we all had to have logged 3 role plays as a mediator. And and in addition to that, we have still got 28 hours to do to get certification from EMIN, which is the International Mediation Organization. So, and then after that, you've got a role play to do on video, and then you have got and references, quite detailed references to send off and have sent anonymously. And you also have to log all these extra hours, and you have to find them wherever you can find them. And there are lots of excellent sources and resources online and so on to, where you can actually find this information to augment the information that you get on the course. One of the most interesting aspects of the elder mediation training has been the MOOC, the online um, understanding dementia course, which is run by the University of Tasmania. It runs for about 21 hours, but it fulfills the requirements for your knowledge on dementia for elder mediation training. Um, and it is extremely interesting to learn about the pathology of dementia. And you might wonder why I'm talking about dementia so much, but actually, it can be such a feature for in elder mediation situations. And what you learn is, of course, that dementia is multifaceted, and also that it happens in different stages. And the whole idea is to draw our attention to the capacity that an older person will have. And that an older person is not somebody who necessarily doesn't know what's going on. An older person has different full capacity or limited capacity or almost no capacity, but that you need to know that before you start and respect that.
And that's really interesting that you say that, because there's many different aspects to elder mediation. So we talked about the capacity to mediate, and then that leaves a space then as who is going to be the advocate for that elderly person, or it could be a elderly couple as well. Let's remember that. Um, and there's a big aspect of family mediation as part of that as well. Um, and then the advocate then and the capacity to mediate because of the dementia then, and there's I suppose the cognitive ability mightn't be there then. Is there tricky situations that you might find yourself in that, this is how we need to train it to help navigate this?
Yeah, well, there are tricky situations, but some of those tricky situations can actually be created by the families. I mean, you referred to family mediation. This is
Yeah,
one of the reasons why I find it and was drawn to elder mediation actually was the whole family aspect of it, because you're rarely you're mediating often with adult siblings, mostly in fact adult siblings and their parent or parents.
yeah,
And you can have different situations in regards to advocacy. You could have formal advocates, or you can have people, members of the family, putting themselves forward as advocates and spokespersons. And it can often emerge that in fact the rest of the family don't agree that this person should be an advocate for the older person.
yeah,
Or you can have when you have a couple coming in, and possibly one of them is suffering from even the beginnings of dementia, the partner will advocate for his or her partner. And it's very tricky because you've got to navigate that, um, I suppose, that space between capacity and limited capacity or reduced capacity. And you've got your priority is always to see the capacity in the person and to make sure. I mean, one of the things that can happen is elder abuse, and I mean that's a huge thing, a huge sort of red flag that you have to look out for. And there can be, as you would know, all kinds of different abuse, like financial abuse, emotional, psychological, sexual, physical abuse, and you also have to be aware of that might be present. Um,
yeah. And
I
and
don't know
that's
if I've
where.
answered your question,
Yeah,
William,
you
but
have. You've answered it great, because then there's other aspects then as old family dynamics come up, or that abuse is going on, and the financial abuse. People might be saying we're not putting that person into a nursing home because that's going to reduce our inheritance, or who's share the caring of the sharing needs, or some person is like, well, you're not spending money on that, and they're in a different country and not facing the reality of what it is to take care of that person. Isn't there loads of different dynamics that come up? Is I've just touched
absolutely.
on a few.
You have, and absolutely accurately, that's absolutely the case. And that very thing you mentioned about, some members of the family not wanting to spend money in case, the inheritance is reduced, or, other members of the family offering to take the person to live with them, and then having to navigate the actual practicalities of what that will look like. Um,
Mm.
but you mentioned, I think that's what makes elder mediation so interesting. One of the things that makes it so interesting is that old family dynamics come back, and it may not be anything as sinister as abuse or anything like that. It's simply that you have adults who have been children together and are now drawn back in to the family of origin,
Yeah,
pulled back in, forced back in, some would say, and some just
yeah,
simply don't want to be there. They just haven't had to consider this before. They've always seen their parents as their parents, and
yeah,
and it's almost, I won't say it's a role reversal, but they have to consider the needs of their parents in a way that they didn't have to do so before, and it can lead to huge conflict between siblings and their parent. And you often have a situation where you may have one child or adult child living nearby and doing a lot of the sort of the practical things for parents, going in and out to them and doing that, and being resentful of others who are not, even though they might live in sort of faraway places and are
yeah,
kind of doing their best. And it's interesting. I think if I've learned one thing, it's that you've got to meet people where they're at and accept that people are where they're at and that they give according to their capacity and their ability at the time. And that
Yeah.
includes emotional ability, because I
Yeah.
think what you learn also is that children inherit sometimes different experiences of their parents, you
Yeah.
know, and in a way that comes back, that comes home to roost when they're adults. Now, that's not based on any deep psychological readings or anything. That's just an observation that I would have
Yeah.
over the years, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think it's can be somewhat complex then, because then you have, we'll say, for those people who are living nearby or living arrangements or getting groceries, so groceries, cleaning duties, arranging medical appointments, different things like that. So,
Right.
there is a big mental load as well as the
Yeah.
workload there. And then if there's declining health, then do people take time out of work? And then how is that compensated for if they're the primary carer? Then, there's loads of
Yeah.
different complexities then.
Yeah, and it's often self-appointed, and this is the other problem, that people sometimes who appoint themselves to this role actually don't
Yeah.
want to come out of the role either, even though
Yeah.
they complain about being in it, because there's a guilt there, there's a sense of duty,
Yeah.
and again that sort of falls on different members of the family in different ways, so it can lead to anger and annoyance and harsh words, in a mediation situation. But as with any mediation, it's important that people have their say. And sometimes I think with family, it's so deeply rooted, and it has been. It's not. It's almost like what happens. Mediation has an urgency about it, because if a family come to mediation, it is because they really need to get something sorted pretty quickly, because something has happened, some trigger has happened to make
Yeah.
them realize that they need to get something sorted out, and they're forced to reach back into themselves and into the emotions that they've experienced, as members of that family, and that can be really difficult, and it can take time to allow people to talk it out. There's no rushing of private meetings. It's
Yeah.
very important to caucus, to um, take people offside and let them talk things through, make sure that they're comfortable with saying certain things, as with any mediation,
Yeah.
in front of the family at large. There can be huge sensitivities, I think,
Yeah.
um, in these situations.
Speaking of sensitivities, then it's sensitivities that go with trust. If there's sibling rivalries, then there's end of life decisions. How do we manage that? There's this power of attorney, and then is it the eldest sibling that's doing that? And are they the best person for that? Sometimes it's the youngest, and people have different experiences there. Then you have the complexities. If there's land or farm or a business, there's different things like that. And this is where I think what people may not realize is, because the government has said this needs to be regulated, you have to have training in this area. The reason for this is it's the fastest growing area of mediation because of our aging population. So this area is going to even grow and grow more, because there's many people then in a sandwich generation, isn't it, where they're they have other tensions, and there's that emotional availability, then a mental ability when you're trying to juggle young kids and elderly adults, because people are living longer, isn't it
Yeah.
the case?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And I think, we have the Assisted Decision Making Act, which has commenced now in
Yeah.
2023. It was passed in 2015, so there's been some talk about it for a long time. But what it means is, for example, that such things as wards of court won't exist any longer. And in fact, there now has to be interventions in with the decision making service to get people out of wards of court, to give them the choice of getting not being wards of court. And I know that applies to people who would be, maybe have been incapacitated in some way as children or whatever. But there are also older people who are in that situation. And in relation to the power of attorney, well, as your audience will know, that is something which needs to be decided by the person themselves. So in other words, they need to have capacity. So if, for example, there's dementia um, has set in, and it may not be obvious for some long time. It may be that the person is not able to appoint a power of attorney. I suppose what we've also learned is that that concept of next of kin does not exist. It is not a legal entity. Being a next of kin is not a legal entity, that you need to be appointed as with enduring power of attorney. That has been taken out of the hands with this act. That has been kind of taken out of the hands of solicitors, and there's some dispute at the moment going on between the decision making services and the law courts because. But that's something we probably don't need to get into. I'd say the message is make sure you have your will written and make sure that you have an advanced care directive if you're at any time of life. But it's that awareness. I think that if people could be made more aware, and it's like everything in life, it only kind of comes to people when they come to that stage themselves. Um, or if they've had the experience of parents whom they've seen through aging, if you like, and supported through aging. It's so important to actually, and so positive thing that
Yeah.
people actually can have full power over what happens to them when they get older. And that's something which not everybody in a mediation situation might understand.
So let's talk about your own experience. So if I was a person listening into this video and watching this, and I'm now interested in this. So you were saying you were doing your diploma, and it was done in two blocks. Is it over the course of a year? What's the kind of time commitment there?
Yeah. Yeah, well, the course started last November 23, and then we had another block in April 24. And in the interim, we had we spent 2 days. We grouped together as a group, we're a group of 10, and we had the role plays. We were given headlines, as you would be when you come into mediation. You have a general idea of what the issue is, but you don't know the details. So we did the role plays. And then we have, in the meantime, we're in the process now of working up an extra 28 hours on all kinds of issues. There are 11 different areas. So the best source of information for all of that is the EMIN website, EMIN, which is the International Elder Mediation Organization. And actually, they're having a conference, an online conference in early November. But if you go onto their website, you'll find that you can become a certified elder mediator, or you can become an advanced elder mediator, and it'll show you all the requirements. So when those hours have been finished, it'll be a question of getting an appointing and asking two people to go referee, and they'd have to write out quite a detailed reference for you, and they send it anonymously to the assessors. And then once you've gone through, then you join Emin as well. And then once you've gone through all those hoops, you then do a role play, a videoed role play, and that has to go in. And depending on the results, generally, you get your certification. So it is quite a long process, and you have to be prepared, prepared for that.
Okay.
But I think that what's really important is to have worked up experience in mediation. You need to have your confidence for any type of mediation. I'm sure you'll agree. Mine has been gained some private cases, but largely in the community. So it's pro bono work, but you do come across many interesting sort of situations and all kinds of different disputes in the community. And it does put you in there. You get in there head first, and you have to. That's how you gain your experience. But the training is
Yeah.
absolutely only the beginning of it. Absolutely only the beginning of it. You really, I used to talk about it being like jumping off a cliff doing my first mediation. Your first mediation is a scary business, but you learn a lot also from the co-mediators, because that's how we do it in community. You learn a
Yeah.
huge amount from your colleagues who co-mediate. And one thing I learned, and I just was so pleased about it, was working with somebody who didn't use any notes at all, came in without any notes. And I thought, this guy's onto something. And I don't use notes now, except to make a note of something that somebody might say. I know on the course, Luke used to call it the green buses, or the
Yeah.
buses anyway.
Yeah.
um, oh, there's something, just a little note. Now you can come back to that, you can pick that up. But it's amazing how you learn and get the confidence to listen and to just devote yourself to listening, and you won't miss things. You just won't if you're fully engaged, if you're fully in the moment. So I mean, I think all that experience beforehand has been really necessary and helpful for me, because
Yeah.
it gave me confidence even in doing the role plays on the training and things like that. I said, it's okay, just listen to what's coming at you. And the great thing also, and something for your audience, I'm sure they'll eventually realize that each mediation is different. Your adrenaline should be flowing every time you walk into a mediation, because you don't know what's going to come out of it, and you need to be on your you need to be on your toes for everyone. So it's not a question of getting, yes, hopefully you do get better, but you also are coming onto a new situation every time. And therefore you have to kind of gather your skills and be mentally present for it. You can't rest on your laurels.
Blathnaid Colhoun, there were lovely insights there. Thank you so much for taking the time out to record this
I'm
for
absolutely
our audience.
delighted to talk to you, William. It's been a real pleasure. I had so much joy training with MFI, and I've great memories of it, and would always speak very highly of it. So I'm very pleased to do this. Thank you.